It was the day of a family dinner centered around my 3-month-old son, Alexander. While everyone was enjoying their meal, my 8-year-old niece, Emma, was the only one not eating. Instead, she was intently watching Alexander. Alexander was also staring back at Emma, moving his arms and legs. Seems like Alexander has something to say. Then Emma began to speak, and what she said was astonishing. My husband Michael's face turned pale and his lips trembling. Michael had been called out on a secret he thought only he knew. Seeing this, I decided to expose Michael's truth right then and there. I'm Jessica, a 25-year-old housewife. I married Michael, who is 3 years older and works in an office 2 years ago. Despite the challenges of new motherhood, we were living a happy life as a family of 3. My sister Sophia and her husband live nearby. Ever since I was pregnant, Sophia has been a great help, often coming over to assist with chores and keep me company. One day, Sophia told me something unbelievable. Her 8-year-old daughter, Emma, my niece, apparently has a mysterious power. Sophia recounted an incident. When she and Emma were driving, Emma suddenly said, "We should take another route. There will be an accident if we go this way." Sophia didn't understand why Emma would say such a thing, especially when the road ahead looked clear. But Emma looked so serious that Sophia decided to change routes. The next day, we learned from the news that a major accident had occurred on the road they were initially going to take. Sophia was horrified to think what might have happened if she had ignored Emma's warning. There were other instances too, like when Emma predicted a burglary in the neighbor's house, which actually happened. However, Sophia had warned the neighbors in advance, so they were able to evacuate with their valuables, avoiding any loss. I am not a fan of the occult, so I just found Sophia's stories creepy, and I didn't really believe Emma had any special powers. I told Michael about it, but he also brushed it off, saying, "Well, strange things do happen." By the way, ever since I got pregnant, Michael started coming home late, often drunk. I wished he would help me with the baby or the housework, even just a little, but that never happened. He had promised to co-parent when we found out I was pregnant, but after the birth, he left all the child care to me. Finally home! Michael's drunken voice would wake up Alexander, who I had just put to sleep. Holding a crying Alexander, I told Michael, "Please keep it down, you're waking Alexander, and can you please cut back on the drinking and come home earlier?" Michael yelled back, "I have work obligations, okay? You should be grateful you can live this way. Stop nagging me." His shouting woke Alexander again, who cried even louder this time. I was angry at Michael's words, but arguing with a drunk person was pointless. All I could do was put Alexander back to sleep. 2 weeks later, Sophia and Emma came to visit on a day when Michael was home. Seeing Alexander for the first time, Emma said, "He's so tiny and cute," and was completely enamored with the baby. But after a while, Emma started glancing at Michael. Curious, I asked, "Emma, what's going on?" Emma replied, "Jessica, it looks like Alexander has something he wants to say." Looking at Alexander in his crib, he was staring at Emma. Then Emma said, "This is a secret from Michael," and whispered something in my ear. Upon hearing it, I was so shocked that I lost my words and stared at Michael. Michael, who knew nothing, simply met my gaze. I said to Emma, "But Alexander is just a baby, he can't talk." Emma looked serious and said, "It's true, he's saying he doesn't want to be away from Mommy, and to be careful around Daddy." I couldn't believe what Emma was saying, but her earnest expression and teary eyes made me wonder. After Sophia and Emma left, I asked Michael, "Do you have any secrets from me?" Michael quickly replied, "Why would you say that?" "Just asking." "I have no secrets, you have nothing to worry about," Michael said. "All right," I responded, but despite his words, Michael seemed anxious and his behavior was suspicious. Then he started doing something he never does, changing Alexander's diaper. This made me even more suspicious of him. Is Michael hiding something from me? I couldn't get what Emma had said out of my mind, and I started to doubt Michael. The next day, after Michael left for work, Sophia and Emma suddenly showed up. Sophia apologized. Sorry for coming unannounced. Emma insisted on coming over. Emma's expression was dead serious. It's okay, don't apologize. Emma, welcome. Come on in. As I said this, Emma entered and lovingly gazed at Alexander, who was sleeping in his crib. But while I was preparing drinks in the kitchen, I noticed Emma staring intently at Michael's study. Emma, what's going on? I asked. Jessica, it's hidden here, Emma said, pointing at Michael's bookshelf. Upon closer inspection, I found a hidden diary and some documents tucked between the books. I had no idea Michael kept a diary, but curiosity got the better of me and I read it. The diary revealed a horrifying plan that Michael was secretly plotting. I couldn't believe he was capable of such thoughts. My hands were shaking and I thought maybe Emma's mysterious power was real. When I showed the diary to Sophia, she gripped my hand and said, It's okay, I'll protect you. Sophia then suggested, If you're worried, would it be okay if Emma and I come over when Michael is off work? Tears welled up in my eyes, and I felt reassured. Of course, Sophia, thank you. Emma looked up at us, concerned. I guess Emma's mysterious power was real. I'm sorry for doubting it before. Sophia smiled and said, I told you so, but it's good that we found out before anything serious happened. Thanks to Emma, right? Thank you. You're welcome, Emma said, blushing with a shy smile. I felt my love for Michael turning into resentment. I can't let this go. I'll investigate whether what Emma is saying is true, and if it is, I'll get back at him. I decided to confront Michael at a dinner party where both our parents would be present. From then on, Sophia and Emma would visit our home whenever Michael had a day off. At first, Michael was hospitable, but he gradually became irritable whenever Sophia and her family came over. Eventually, despite Sophia and Emma being there, Michael wanted to go out just with me. Sophia, can you watch Alexander while we go on a date? Michael asked, but Sophia declined. Michael, no can do. Alexander cries non-stop without Jessica around. Right, Alexander? Still, Michael persisted. Come on, I think Jessica needs a change of scenery too. Just getting some fresh air could be refreshing. True, but do we need to go out for that? Why not just dip into the garden and get some fresh air? The weather is nice today, it'll feel good. Sophia always managed to counter Michael's arguments without upsetting him, so he had nothing to say. From that point on, Michael became increasingly irritable. Finally, the day of the dinner party arrived. My parents, in-laws, and Sophia's family gathered to have a meal around Alexander. I was busy preparing the dishes I had cooked early in the morning. Look here, Alex. Ah, so cute. Michael was filming. Seeing this, my father-in-law murmured, Michael has become a fine father, and my mother-in-law nodded, tears in her eyes. Our son Alexander was also smiling, surrounded by everyone. Then the dinner party began. In the cheerful atmosphere, only Emma was staring at Alexander without eating. Alexander was also staring at Emma, moving his hands and feet. Sophia said to Emma, Here, your favorite apple juice. But Emma didn't respond. Just when I was wondering if Emma was sensing something again, she said to Michael, Do you love money more than Jessica? The room fell silent at Emma's words, and everyone froze, staring at her. Why would you say that, Emma? I asked. Because that's what Alexander is saying, Emma replied, pointing at him. I exchanged glances with Sophia, but everyone else was confused. Michael chuckled and said, Emma, Alexander can't talk yet. You shouldn't lie like that, lightly touching her head. Emma forcibly shook off his hand. It's not a lie. The baby says Daddy is trying to push Mommy from a high place to get money. You mean me? I would never do such a thing. Alexander loves Mommy, so he's saying to stop being Daddy. While everyone was shocked, only Michael turned pale and his lips began to tremble. Stop messing around. Don't say such ridiculous things." Suddenly, Michael slammed the table and yelled. Emma's face tightened, and Alexander looked like he was about to cry. I wanted the dinner party to be pleasant, but that seemed impossible now. Michael had lost his temper at Emma's words before I could even bring up the topic. His reaction was like an admission of guilt. With a cold gaze, I confronted Michael. "So, you've been cozying up to a woman you met at a club and inflating company expenses, haven't you?" Michael looked flustered and said, "What are you talking about?" I thrust the diary I found on the bookshelf at him. "It's all written here. Are you planning to deny it? That's about a subordinate at work. I would never do something so stupid." Sweat was forming on Michael's forehead. "Reading someone's diary without permission is an invasion of privacy. I have no reason to be lectured by someone as low as you. What are you trying to say? Still playing dumb? You hatched a terrible plan to fix things before getting caught for embezzling, didn't you?" I opened the diary to the page detailing the criminal plan and shoved it in his face, but Michael looked away. "What is this? These are notes for a novel I thought of writing. Besides, a diary isn't evidence." "Really? Then what do you say to this?" I pulled out some documents. "You know what this is, right? A life insurance policy you hid, with a $100,000 payout on me. What were you planning?" Michael started to panic. "That is, you planned to kill me, collect the insurance money, and repay the embezzled funds. Isn't this solid proof?" Stuck for words, Michael could only say, "No." Emma had secretly told me this when she first met Alexander. "Michael wants money and is planning to push you from a high place." From that moment, although I found it hard to believe, I started to suspect Michael. Both sets of parents were frozen in shock. Cornered, Michael had nothing to say and hung his head, but then suddenly fell to his knees, clinging to my leg. "Jessica, I'm sorry. Please pay back the money I used." "Why should I?" Michael looked like he was about to cry. "Don't say that. We're married, right? Please, if the company finds out, I'll be fired. How will we live?" Michael had trivialized my life for his own benefit. I deeply regretted ever being with such a person. I peeled off the clinging Michael and said, "I can't be married to someone as horrifying as you. It's bad for Alexander too, so let's get a divorce." I then thrust a pre-filled divorce application at him. I also demanded a $20,000 settlement and $500 a month in child support. "No way! Alexander is still young. Paying that much money forever is a joke." "Stop arguing and sign the divorce papers already." Michael was stomping on the ground and wailing like a child. His pathetic display made me feel nauseous. Then my father-in-law, who had been silent until now, shouted, "Michael, enough is enough." He probably couldn't stand to see Alexander witnessing such disgrace any longer. "You have no right to refuse the divorce and the settlement." Pressured by his father, Michael reluctantly signed the divorce papers. After that, my in-laws apologized to us profusely and took Michael away, almost dragging him. The next day, I submitted the divorce papers to the court. I also contacted Michael's company to report his suspected misuse of company funds. Soon after, his misdeeds came to light, and he was apparently fired. To pay the settlement, child support, and restitution to the company, Michael had to sell his house. Now he's working as a living construction worker from morning till night. I considered reporting this to the police, but in the end, there was no evidence other than what Michael had written in his diary. So I decided to be grateful that, thanks to Emma and Alexander, the incident was prevented. Now I'm back at my parents' home, living a peaceful life with Alexander. Sophia and Emma come to visit Alexander almost every day. Alexander says he's happy to be with mommy all the time. Emma told me this, and it put my mind at ease. I wonder if there's a way of communicating that only Emma and Alexander understand. And is it something that adults can't grasp? While pondering these thoughts, I look at Alexander's joyful smile. and vowed to continue pouring my love into him and protecting him with my own hands.
About the robbery incident, I have something to ask your father. A robbery? My father? Yes, your father is suspected of the robbery. Is he at home now? Yes, he's here, but do you want to see him?
The police officer looked puzzled at my tone for a moment, but then said,
Please let me see him, so I led the police officer inside the house. My father is here.
Upon seeing my father, the police officer was stunned. We go back several months. My name is Joseph McCann, a senior. I have landed a job at a major corporation, and I would like to say I'm relieved. But there's something I'm still unsure about. It's whether or not I should take over the company my father runs. My father is a president of a local factory. When I was young, I wanted to inherit the local factory and become a president like my father. But those feelings disappeared when I hit my rebellious period. I began to feel embarrassed about my father always in work clothes and covered in grease. That feeling hasn't changed even into adolescence, and now it lingers somewhere in my heart. Having grown up and knowing the hardships of work through part-time jobs, I did develop respect for my father, who carries the lives of many employees and their families. But I couldn't shake the thought that an office worker in a suit might be cooler. One day while shopping with my father, we were suddenly called from behind, "Aston!" And both my father and I turned around. The man there appeared to be the same age as my father.
Duncan, it's been a long time.
This Duncan seemed to be my father's high school classmate. Dressed in a suit, Duncan was apparently out on sales calls. After revealing that he worked for a famous major corporation, Duncan asked my father,
So, you took over the family business?
"Yes, that's right. I'm still making it work somehow."
That filthy little local factory, right? Becoming the boss of a place like that and with only a high school diploma? You really have sunk low, haven't you?
I was stunned by Duncan's words. That local factory was started by my grandfather, and my father was the second generation. I knew he took over after high school, but I never thought I would have a classmate who would mock it. Duncan continued, smiling silently at my father.
So, did you manage to grow your father's local factory? Weren't you saying you were going to take over the company in high school and make it big? No, unfortunately, it seems I didn't have the business sense. That dream never came true. Well, that's just like you. You were skilled with your hands, but not smart in the head. But at least you didn't ruin the company, right? I thought someone like you would have run it into the ground.
Duncan, laughing heartily, slapped my father's shoulder and said,
I have to get back to work. I'll see you at the next reunion.
Then he left. My father, who had been berated, seemed a bit awkward and said,
Well, shall we go?
And started walking to resume shopping. At that moment, I felt that my father's work, which had just been belittled without any rebuttal from me, was something to be ridiculed. The choice of taking over my father's company or getting a job at a major well-known company titled heavily towards joining the big corporation. A few weeks later, my father's reunion was held. Coincidentally, the venue was the restaurant where I work part-time. It was a busy day, and I didn't have a chance to serve food or drinks to the table where my father's reunion was taking place. I thought I was lucky, but after a while, the opportunity arose. I felt a little embarrassed to bring drinks to my father's reunion, but since it was my job, I did so without saying anything. Our restaurant consists entirely of private booths. When I popped my head into the large room rented out for my father's reunion, my father, who was near the entrance, greeted me with a smile, saying,
Oh, Joseph.
Could he be your son? A woman nearby asked. My dad introduced me as his son, so I politely greeted,
My father is in your care, and light out the drinks I brought on the table.
With remarks from Dad's inebriated classmates about how my eyes resembled my father's or how serious I am like him, I awkwardly laughed. Then from a distance, Duncan noticed us and said,
We met just the other day. Joseph, was it? Planning to take over Aston's local factory?
At Duncan's boozy question, I replied with disgust yet honesty,
No, I'm still considering it.
And Duncan loudly exclaimed,
Don't do it. Aston's company is nothing great. Rather than taking over a company like that, Joseph should work in a company just like me.
Saying this, Duncan began bragging about his work history, but something was off. He had said he was in sales when we last met, but now he was talking about being a head of the accounting department. I felt a dissonance but kept quiet, knowing that pointing it out might cause trouble. But my drunk father's mouth was loose.
It hasn't been long since we last met. Did you change departments? It's only been a few weeks since we bumped into each other. Quite a hasty transfer, huh? Sales didn't suit you?
At my father's words, Duncan's usually chatty mouth stopped. A flustered Duncan nodded, saying,
Yes, a dirty job like sales didn't suit me. I became head of the accounting department as soon as I transferred.
That's strange. I heard that company was merged with a global enterprise and the accounting base is overseas, isn't it? As my father pointed out, Duncan's bragged about company had been merged into a global corporation. It seemed many others knew this but hadn't said anything, and laughter erupted at my father's comment.
Hey Duncan, what's going on? You're the head of accounting at a merged place? Shut up. I can't stay at this gathering.
Embarrassed, Duncan trembled with frustration and announced, "I'm leaving." Then he stomped out, leaving with loud footsteps.
I wonder if I did something wrong,
the father said. But the people around assured him that it wasn't the case and that Duncan had always been like that. Watching my father being praised for speaking his mind, I felt happy. Even though he was a bit tipsy, my dad had the guts to say what everyone else found hard to put into words. He was quite impressive. Half a year passed from that day. I was still struggling with whether or not to take over my father's company. The uncertainty deepened daily, and honestly, I was so confused that I didn't know what to do. Then one day, while relaxing at home, the doorbell rang. My mother was out, so I answered it.
Yes? Hello, you're Mr. McKen, right?
The visitor was a police officer in uniform. Startled, I replied in a tense voice, yes? As I began to worry about what might have happened, the police officer said,
I have some questions for your father about a robbery.
A robbery? My father?
Yes, that's right. Your father is suspected of robbery. Is he at home now?
Yes, he is here, but do you want to see him? From my tone, the police officer looked puzzled for a moment, but said,
Please let me see him. Here is my father.
What was there was an altar and my father's photograph. I then told the stunned police officer that my father had passed away in traffic accident.
I'm sorry for your loss,
the police officer said, and I asked him, my father was not a person who would rob anyone. Who is suspecting my father of being a robber?
I cannot share that personal information. I truly apologize for today's intrusion.
After apologizing repeatedly, the police officer left. Who on earth had accused my father of robbery? I was feeling frustrated, but the answer was soon revealed. A few days later, I was helping out at my father's local factory, taking over the role since he had passed away. My mother has been filling in for my father, but she's already in her 50s, and she had only assisted my father a little in his work. It didn't feel enough to replace my father, so I was the one helping. That's when Duncan barged in.
Aston, come out. Return what you stole.
The factory was filled with the loud noise of heavy machinery, but Duncan shouted over it with a voice so loud that I was taken aback, and I wasn't the only one. The other workers stopped in surprise, and I spoke to Duncan.
My father isn't here. Then, he's home? Call him right here. I've been robbed and I'm in trouble.
I could hear a voice from among the workers asking robbed the boss, but Duncan crossed his arms and stood firm. He was angrily repeating, bring out Aston, so I asked him, my father is not the kind of person who would rob someone.
Are you sure you're not mistaken? No, it was Aston. Aston must have been jealous of me working for a big company and stole my bag. Luckily, I didn't have my wallet with me, but the fact that he robbed me is unforgivable. The police are useless, so I came here myself. Let me talk to Aston.
When did this robbery happen, by the way?
It was about 2 weeks ago.
The workers began to murmur at Duncan's answer, which he gave after some hesitation. He seemed confused by the commotion. When I asked Duncan,
so it was really 2 weeks ago?
He seemed to lose his temper at my persistence.
He started yelling, what's going on? Why do you keep checking? I told you it was 2 weeks ago. I, an elite, came all the way to the small, greasy local factory. Let me see Aston now.
I felt a surge of heat in my chest at Duncan's commotion. It was unbearable to hear Duncan denigrate my father's work and the work of his employees at my father's workplace. But the worst part was trying to pin the crime of robbery on my father. My father died in a traffic accident a month ago, so he cannot be here. When I told him this, Duncan's face showed surprise and he said, "What?" I continued, "How could my father, who died a month ago, rob anyone? Are you sure you were really robbed?" I knew Duncan was a liar, and that came to light at the recent class reunion. I later found out from my father's classmates that Duncan had been a liar since his student days. Furthermore, a girl Duncan liked had a crush on my father, and it seems that Duncan has harbored a pointless rivalry with my father since those days. I couldn't forgive Duncan, who was trying to pin a crime on my father out of such a silly rivalry. So you're saying that he was robbed a month ago? He must have committed a robbery just before he died, right? Just as I was about to yell at Duncan, who was still persisting, I heard a shout from another direction. "The boss would never do such a thing. The boss is a very serious person." That's right. The reason we are always short-staffed is that the boss teaches us skills and that encourages us to be independent. He's always thinking about his employees and clients, never about profits. He was a good person. As Duncan faltered, praise for my father came one after another. I was sincerely moved. I felt ashamed of myself for ever thinking that my father's work was embarrassing. My father was a boss who was respected by his employees and loved enough to be defended even in this situation. Duncan's eyes filled with tears as voices defending my father rose from the factory. I delivered the final blow. "I will definitely consult the police about you trying to pin a false charge on my father." With that, Duncan let out a cry and ran out of the factory. After that, I went to the police to consult them about my father being framed by Duncan just as I had declared. The evidence was Duncan's statement, which had been recorded on a mobile phone by one of the employees who thoughtfully did it for us. Thanks to one of the employees recording the argument, there was evidence left. The police acted quickly since there was evidence, and Duncan was caught in no time. Duncan's act of framing someone with a false charge became his crime, and he seems to be behind bars for a while. He mocked my father while he was alive and tried to pin a crime of him even after he was gone. I felt a sense of relief, thinking he deserved to suffer. A few days later, a woman claiming to be Duncan's wife came to apologize to my mother and me. When I asked if Duncan's attempt to frame my father was due to what happened at the reunion, Duncan's wife sighed and told me, "That's right, it seems like something that hit a sore spot at the reunion was the cause." In fact, Duncan was a former high flyer, and it appeared that he had been fired from his job. He was looking for new employment but without success, and that's when he ran into me and my father. Duncan was fixated on being an elite and told lies, but when he got drunk, he ended up telling inconsistent lies, embarrassing himself. Enraged, Duncan began to resent my father, deciding to frame him. I was utterly dumbfounded by the outrageous reasons for the lies, and it seems Duncan's wife felt the same way. She informed me that she plans to divorce Duncan. Apparently, Duncan has no children, so even if he gets out of jail, there won't be anyone waiting for him. After graduating college, as for what I did, I decided to take over my father's company. I was concerned about the company's management since my father had just passed away. But I could never forget the voices of the employees who defended my father when Duncan framed him with lies. I wanted to become a boss who is loved and respected by the employees, and that incident made me feel that way from the bottom of my heart. I was part of the business school, so I can handle the management part that my father was weak at. But I need the staff to teach me about the technology. The staff say, "We'll teach you anything for the boss's son," and they're always ready to help me. They also share a lot of memories about my father, making me realize his greatness every time. "Dad, you were really an amazing person. I'm ashamed. I didn't realize it while you were alive. I'm truly sorry." I talked to his picture. "I'm covered in oil stains after work. I'm ashamed of myself for thinking this was uncool. These stains were evidence of how hard my father had worked." "I'll work hard to become a boss like you, Dad. I'll make sure to fulfill your dream." I talked to his picture and it seems like my father is smiling back. I intend to work my hardest to become a boss like my father. I want to fulfill my father's dream of expanding our local factory, which has been in our family since my grandfather's time.
One day, I came home to find my room completely empty. What the heck is going on? Behind me, I heard a triumphant voice from my sister-in-law. Childless, unproductive old woman like you can do nothing but stand in my way. Get out. Sister-in-law was trying to move me out and take over my parents' house. I was single. That is ridiculous. I'll thoroughly investigate your wicked scheme. My name is Catherine. I'm a single 40-year-old office worker. It's not that I've never met someone good, but for various reasons, I ended up never getting married. Sometimes I feel lonely, but, well, that's life. I've reached the age where I can accept that marriage isn't everything. Being single is indeed carefree. Plus, there's a matter of taking care of my parents. I have one older brother, but he lives far away from our parents' home. My brother left our hometown to pursue his career, and since our father passed away 3 years ago, my mother had to live by herself. Living not too far from my parents' home, I became concerned about my elderly mother and decided to take the plunge and live with her. Now it's just the two of us, 2 women, enjoying our peaceful days. However, my mother, whose mind is still sharp, broke her leg a year ago and has become disabled. She has difficulty walking with a cane, and she mostly moves around by car or wheelchair. She's somewhat disabled in the house as well, and has become in need of care. Because I am single and able to live with her, she has been taken care of. If I were married and living elsewhere or living far away, it would have been quite difficult, so I guess it's been all right that I'm still single. Yeah. That said, while I'm content with my life, there's someone who's not happy about it. My sister-in-law. My brother married a woman who is much younger than him. So even though she is a sister-in-law, she is younger than me in her early 30s. A young sister-in-law. My brother's family lives far away, but they come home for the holidays like Christmas and summer vacation. However, for some reason, every time they visit, the sister-in-law is harsh towards me. This past Christmas, when my brother's family came to visit us, the sister-in-law came over and whispered in my ear, "Catherine, still mooching off your parents, I see." What? No, I'm not exactly mooching off them. Living at your parents' home at 40 years old and being single, if that's not a parasite, I don't know what is. Is that so? Yes, I'm raising 3 children, you know. Do you get what I mean? What do you mean? The population of our state is decreasing, isn't it? Our family is contributing to the population increase. Singles like you are truly harmful. Harmful? Do you enjoy decreasing the population? Is there any point in being born if you're going to be single for life? She goes that far. At least have a child or something. What she said struck a chord within me. Although I am single due to various reasons, there was a man I wanted to marry. But there was a bit of a problem with my body. Simply put, I can't have children. He asked me to be in a relationship with him, and since he had an intent for the future together from the beginning, I laid out everything on the table for him since day one. He said, "I just want to be with you, even if we don't have kids. As long as we're together, I'll be happy." So I agreed to date him. But marriage turned out to be more than just the 2 of us. The trials and dramas we went through ultimately led me to stay single. The appalling words of my sister-in-law left me speechless. And yet, she had the audacity to take advantage of me financially. We have 3 kids, you know. Be fair with your Christmas gifts. We expect them to be generous. We expect you to gift us some money as a kindergarten enrollment celebration, and it's gonna be at least for $1,000. You're not so poor that you can't afford that, right, Auntie? Don't you want to provide a proper education for the kids? Oh, right, you don't have any kids, so you wouldn't understand. But I let you have the joy of raising our kids, so pay for their extracurricular activities. It's like she thinks if she uses the kids as an excuse, she can get away with more money. Sure, I'll give gifts for occasions, But I don't understand why I have to bear with her tisk-tisking after she checks the amount of money in the envelope on the spot. And why should I be the one to pay for their extracurricular activities? When I bring it up to my mom or my brother, they make incredulous faces, unable to believe such audacity of my sister-in-law because they haven't seen it. That's right, she only ever behaves this way when it's just the two of us. She's pretty slick. This past New Year's holiday, she immediately opened the New Year's gifts I gave to my nephew and niece. It was while my brother was out of the room, having stepped away for a moment to help my mom with something. She spat out, "Huh? This is it? This paltry sum is your gift? Just how poor are you, you stingy bitch?" It's another comment that my mom and brother find hard to believe, so I'm thinking I should start recording her. However, there would be such negative repercussions on the family relationships if I keep tattling on, so I can't say much. After all, my mom has 3 adorable grandkids. If my complaints lead to my sister-in-law refusing to visit, my mom would be deprived of seeing her grandchildren. That would be too sad for my mom, so I just need to be quiet. If I can just dismiss her harsh remarks, everything will settle down. That's what I thought, until the situation completely changed one day. It was a weekday when my sister came over. It was during the week, so my brother was at work and I was working from home. My mom was at a senior daycare center. The kids were at the daycare and they were going to their maternal grandparents straight after. My sister-in-law was visiting me alone. I was wondering why she was here on such an unusual day. Then she got right down to business. "You know, I've been thinking that we should move in here." Excuse me? Talk about a bolt from the blue. What on earth is she trying to say? You mean move in? That's what I said. We've been thinking of moving in here. Who's we? Our family. Where exactly? Don't make me repeat myself. Into this house. Why? Because I'm pregnant with our 4th child. What? In my brother's family, they already have 3 kids. The oldest is in early elementary school, the middle one is a kindergartner, and the youngest just started preschool. Even though they already have 3 kids, they're having a 4th. I can't help but be impressed. However, they currently live near the sister-in-law's parents' house, so they probably get help with the kids like today. If so, what's the advantage of moving over here? John's gonna be transferred here, that's why. John is my brother. Oh, I remember my brother mentioning something like that. Apparently a branch office is going to open here in our hometown. Who wants to go to the branch office? Me. Apparently he volunteered for the position quite willingly. I wonder why the personnel decisions can be made so casually. Is it okay with you, sis? I mean, wouldn't it be better to stay closer to your parents' place? My parents are still working, so I really can't rely on them too much. They start to frown if I ask too often, saying stuff like, "Ask your husband first," or "Don't make children assuming you can depend on your parents." It'd be hard to mention that we were having a 4th, right? That's your business. How would I know? I can understand her parents' perspective. According to my brother, when he comes home from work, he does the cleaning, the laundry, and even prepares dinner. My sister-in-law confirmed that that is true. Even though he must be tired from work, my brother has always been very considerate of his wife and has helped as much as possible. It could be because of this that my brother seemed tired whenever I saw him from time to time. Still, isn't having another child a bit too reckless? Yet, life is a gift. It's a happy event, and I have no intention of saying, why not just stop having kids? But why are they planning on moving in with us? I must have looked puzzled. My sister-in-law continued. It's a hassle to deal with my parents, and where we live now is just too remote from everything and too inconvenient. So instead of letting John live and work by himself here, we thought it would be nice for all of us to move in. Well, there are a lot of daycares for kids here, right? So, Catherine, could you please move out soon? Excuse me? Once again, I'm taken aback. What the heck is my sister-in-law saying, for God's sake? As far as moving in, let's discuss that with my mother and brother, but why should I be the one to move out? Think about it. We're going to be a family of 6 soon, right? That's true. So isn't this house going to be too small? Well, that's true. Well, I suppose so. That's why I'm telling you to get out. No, I don't understand what you mean. Having 6 in the family is a lot, but it's not impossible for 8 of us to live together, including my mom and myself. Of course, when the kids grow up, It's impossible for all of them to live in an individual room, but I didn't think there was any point in worrying that far ahead. My sister-in-law, annoyed by my increasing confusion, raised her voice. I mean, come on. You're in the way. You, an old woman, can't even have kids. For our sake, get out. What? Oh, and don't move too far away, okay? You're still going to have to look after our kids. What? After ranting, she added, get out of here soon, and then went home. This needs a family meeting, yeah. That night, I told my mom about what Susan had said and called my brother. My brother told me that he'd arrange a separate house for his family. Sure, I've been traveling a lot for work, and I think it's been tough on Susan. That's why we were living near her parents' home in good old Nebraska. But is she really so bothered by the countryside? On the other end of the phone, my brother sounded confused. There was still something that was perplexing, but her idea of moving into our home was temporarily dropped. Well, that was supposed to be the case. One day, after a stretch of working from home, I went into the office for the first time in a while. My mom was away from home, staying overnight at the daycare. Exhausted from work, I came home to get stunned. What? My room? Everything's gone. Believe it or not, my room was empty. All of my belongings were gone. What is this? What's going on? This was undeniably my own home, yet my room was missing. To be precise, my stuff was missing. Where are all my favorite things? I threw them away. All of them. I was screaming in shock when a sudden voice came from behind me, making my heart skip a beat. When I turned around, there was Susan. Susan, what are you doing here so late? Shut up, you'll wake the kids. What? The 3 kids are here? Until the beds arrive tomorrow, they're sleeping on the living room couch. I rushed into the living room where my nephews and niece were sound asleep. What's going on? Looking at me, completely stunned and at a loss for words, Susan laughed and said, You wouldn't leave the house, so I had to resort to drastic measures. I'm not leaving. I've already talked to my brother about this. Do you think you can just do whatever you want? Don't you have any idea how many people you're inconveniencing? Who's the one doing whatever they want here? I'm the one inconvenienced. I really wanted to get those words out of my mouth, but I held my tongue because the kids were asleep. My sister-in-law, Susan, ignores my considerations and loudly declares, Who cares what your mother or brother says? If you move out and our family moves in, those two wouldn't oppose this idea for sure. What happened to my stuff? I had a junk removal service take it all away. No way. Did she really throw out all of my precious things, including my photo albums? This is unbelievable. Come on, if you understand, then get out. Wait, no arguing. I tried to resist, but she's younger and stronger than me. Overpowered, I was thrown out of the house, right there. It was at night, and making a fuss wouldn't do me any good. She ignored the doorbells and the phone calls as well. With no other choice, I spent the night at a no-frills hotel. The next day, I took a day off from work and rushed home. As I was about to unlock the door and enter the house, Susan came out faster. Susan, I tried to contact my brother but couldn't reach him. Let's talk anyway. My husband is on a long business trip abroad. The time difference makes it hard to get in touch with him, you know. I was about to leave, so make sure you look after my kids. Susan! Leaving me in shock, she left quickly. She was all dressed up and everything. With no other choice, I looked after the 3 kids and had a bitter expression when I welcomed my mom home in the evening. Mom, isn't this a bit much? Yes, it's a bit much to ignore John's opinions and be so forceful. Leaving the 3 kids and going out is unbelievable. If she wanted to leave the kids with someone, her own parents would be the best option. Yes, what are the real benefits of living here? Speaking of which, she went out quite dressed up. Really? There might be a clue in that. Agreeing with my mother's words, I immediately requested an investigation from a private detective. A month later, I now live in a 1-bedroom apartment as a temporary residence, which I had to find in a fluster. My room in my parents' house has been completely remodeled by Susan, and it's nowhere near what it used to be. John was furious, saying, Don't do as you please, but she seemed to argue that once they moved in, it'd be their place. And she also seemed to say things like, You're often away from work, aren't you? I thought it'd be nice for the family to stay together, so I came along. Raising children is really hard. It's just natural to live together with your family and get help from them. When he mentioned that my mother was in need of care, she responded, Catherine is there, isn't she? She's just at home all the time. She must have a lot of free time. I'm not sitting around. I'm actually working from home. But Susan seems adamant about not letting me back into the house. Don't you dare think you can get away with this bullshit forever. We're gonna have a talk. With that assertive statement from my brother, a family meeting was held today. Why so sudden? I'm pregnant. Let's wrap this up quickly, okay? Susan grumbled as she rubbed her still not visibly pregnant belly. Ignoring her, my brother, Mom, Susan, and I, 4 adults, huddled together in the living room. By the way, we've left the kids at a weekend daycare. First off, Susan, please apologize for disposing of my belongings without my permission. At my words, Susan scoffed and said, it's your own fault for not moving out sooner. Without an ounce of hesitation. People like you who can't even have kids should just live in a run-down apartment. Yes, it's true that I can't have kids, but I was living together for Mom's sake. But your mother-in-law would be happier living with her grandkids than with you, Susan said, looking at my mom. My mom replied, Of course I'd be happy to live with my grandkids, but hearing this, Susan smirked triumphantly. See? Did you hear that? It's much more meaningful for us to live together than an unproductive person like you. But, ignoring Susan's words, Mom continued, if they were my real grandchildren. Huh? Susan was dumbfounded, not understanding my mom's words. At that moment, my brother presented a large envelope. What is this? The result of your affair investigation. My brother responded calmly. Huh? Susan seemed surprised and stared at my brother, who continued speaking, unflustered. You thought we wouldn't find out, didn't you? What are you talking about? I didn't cheat on you. Really? So these pictures are photoshopped, huh? In response to Susan's denial, my brother spread several pictures on the table. In them, wait, no. There were photos of Susan flirting with a guy. I thought it was strange when you forced us to move away from our parents who help with the kids to move in here. But the city is more convenient, isn't it? But you're not even using any childcare services and pushing the childcare onto Catherine, aren't you? Well, I need a break too. Then why not use the childcare service like today? It's a waste of money. Do you think I haven't given you enough money? I'm saving up for our future. What does that mean when our bank account is down to 0? Saying this, John spread the bank book. Indeed, it was completely 0. What? Hey, why are you just looking through that like it's nothing? It's our family money. Of course I have the right to check. So, where's the savings for our future? Well, in a different account. Oh, really? Let's see that bank book then. I don't have it right now. Where is it? Well, As I watched her continue lying, Susan finally stumbled on her words. Although it wasn't particularly hot, sweat trickled down her forehead. Maybe in the attic? At that moment, John smacked the table hard. Enough with the lies. Can you still make excuses in front of this picture? Oh, sorry. It was just a momentary lapse of judgment. You've been having an affair with this man for a while. Ever since we got married, right? The guy told me. What? No, why did you talk to him? He's got a family too. He told me everything under the condition that I wouldn't tell his wife. What? He betrayed me. The one who betrayed us is you. Susan seemed flustered in front of John's angry face, but eventually she seemed to regain her composure and the sweat had stopped. Then she said, Well, I do regret the affair. I won't do it again. Of course not. But I think it's better not to divorce. It's better for the kids to be with their mother, and more importantly, I'm carrying a new life in my womb. You don't want to be apart from the child, do you? Looking at me, Susan continued. You can't expect grandchildren from a childless daughter, and if I take the kids and leave after the divorce, you'll never see your grandkids again. Is that what you want, mother-in-law? Then she turned towards my mother. Seeing our silence, Susan laughed triumphantly. See? Isn't a barren old woman just a nuisance? It's natural that she should leave. Susan stomped around, huffing and puffing. But then, something unexpected happened. Mother quietly said, Well, you who are totally unproductive to me should also leave with your child. Huh? As she started to smile, puzzled by what she heard, John presented a document to her. What's this? Huh? DNA test results? Negative? What is this? It's a result of a DNA test between me and the kids. When did you? That ain't none of your business. Anyway, the results are as they are. All three, they aren't my kids. And here are the results with your affair partner. Confirmation, meaning they are indeed your kids. What? Huh? My kids ain't mine, meaning they're not my ma's grandchildren. They're complete strangers. No way. It ain't a lie. You knew it, didn't you? You knew, and you pulled a cuckoo move on me, didn't you? I didn't. That's what the other guy said. You said, it's sad that our children can't live together as a family, to him. Susan looked so pale, she might fall over at any moment. And then my mom gave the coup de grace. So you're a burden because you can't bear my son's children. Please pack up and leave with the kids and hurry. What? Are you going to throw us out into the street? Such young kids? You monster! It was then that Susan cried out, trying to elicit sympathy. The monster here is you. A different loud voice echoed through the room. Susan spun around and her eyes bulged. Dad? Why are you here? And Mom too? Yes, there stood Susan's real parents. They've agreed to take all the children once I explain the situation. You stupid daughter. Can there be a more disgraceful story as a parent? I'm sorry. Apparently, Susan can't hold her ground against her father. Her face turned blue as she sobbed. John, and to his mother, and Catherine, I'm really sorry for my stupid daughter. We'll definitely make her pay for the damages. Damages? Wait a minute. I can't afford that. Are you going to pay for me, Dad? No way. I'll front you, but you're paying me back even if it takes you a lifetime. So, her father took Susan, who was seriously on the brink of tears, away without waiting for a reply. Her mom, who kept bowing deeply to us in apology, was quite memorable. Even though they're good parents, they raised such a daughter. Raising kids is tough, isn't it? I found myself musing about this in a rather carefree way. Then afterward, my brother John ended up getting a divorce without a hitch. The money for the alimony and what she had splurged on her infidelity was apparently paid off all at once by her parents. The kids were taken back to their grandparents' home. They had often been left there before, so it seems they're growing up just fine without any confusion. The kids didn't do anything wrong. John, who had always thought they were his real children, said this with a touch of sadness. There's no way you can accept it when you're suddenly told they're not yours. I'm hoping that one day John's emotional wounds will heal. 3 years later, John found a good match and had his real child. But that's another story. As for my brother's ex-wife, Susan, she gave birth to her 4th child, and sure enough, when she tested it for peace of mind, it wasn't John's child. Under strict supervision of her parents, she seems to have been working like mad from morning till night for a while, but she seemed to continue her relationship with her lover undeterred. In the end, her affair was also exposed to her lover's wife. After the huge fight, more alimony was incurred, and it seems she was kicked out of the house by her parents. No one knows what became of her after that. As for me, I'm living peaceful days while taking care of my mom, same as always. In fact, the personal items she disposed of were all retrieved on the same day by contacting the waste disposal company. On such a peaceful day, a familiar face appeared before me. It's been a while. The person smiling before me was the guy I once thought of marrying. I couldn't forget about you, and I have been single all this time. Even my parents finally gave in. They have a rather selfish reason. My brother got married and had a child. They told me I could do as I please about marriage. Caught off guard, he presented me with a ring. It may be too late, but I can't think of anyone but you. I want to help you take care of your mother, so could you please marry me? Unable to hold back, my face crumpled in tears. Without hesitation, I jumped into his arms, where he held me with a gentle smile.
I'm Olive, 35 years old. Since graduating from college, I've worked as an office clerk in the fashion industry. I've always been committed to my job, and it's been like my romantic partner. I climbed the corporate ladder quite smoothly because I love what I do. However, working in a predominantly female company meant fewer chances to meet someone, so my love life was rather limited. Once I hit 30 and saw everyone around me getting married and having kids, I decided to sign up for a dating service. That's how I met George.
From the first date, George was laid back and easygoing, the total opposite of me, who's always in a hurry and rather impatient. At times, I thought he was a bit unreliable, but then I realized that's something I can handle. I decided that George could fill the gap where I lack easygoingness and chose to marry him. George was raised by a single mother, but neither he nor his mom were interested in living together after we got married. The often told tales of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts had me relieved that neither of us wanted to live together. When I met my mother-in-law for the first time before our wedding, she seemed to be sizing me up with a critical stare. That confirmed my feelings that I didn't want to share a home with her. No living with my mother-in-law, and a new chapter begins with George as a married couple. We'll make compromises even when our values clash. That was my resolve. So, a month into our adjusted married life, something completely unexpected happened. "Hello, Olive. How are you? Still no baby? I want to see my grandchild already." "Hi, mother-in-law. It's been a while. What brings you here? What's in the bag?" "Oh, didn't George tell you? I've decided to move in." "What?" Of course, George had never mentioned any such plans to me. Both he and his mom had told me before our marriage that neither of them was interested in living together. So this was a complete curveball. "Hey, mother-in-law's here at the house. She says she's moving in. What's going on?" "What? Mom did mention feeling lonely, but I never heard anything about moving in. I mean, I told her it was okay if she felt too lonely, but living together?" I hid away to make the call, and when George said that, I unintentionally let out a "what?" "Why did you say it was okay to live together without discussing it with me? She probably got the wrong idea. Aren't these the kind of decisions we should be making together?" "Well, I thought having Mom around to help with chores might be nice." When I had greeted her at her home, the last thing I felt was that she could handle household chores. The kitchen was coated in dust, clearly untouched for a while, and the whole house was cluttered. It was nowhere near what you'd call neat. "I want to enjoy my lunch, so I'm gonna hang up now," he said, and abruptly ended the call. Just as I was getting used to life with George, the idea of adding mother-in-law to the equation was overwhelming. While I stood there in disbelief, my mother-in-law called me over, looking annoyed. "Olive, your stuff is in the way. Move it already, will you? Honestly, you can't raise a kid in such a cramped house." "Well, George and I have decided not to have kids. I'm 35 and George is 38. Having a baby past 35 is considered high risk, and I wanted to focus on my career. So we had agreed before marriage to live a peaceful life, just the two of us." I said that mainly to keep my mother-in-law at bay, so we wouldn't have to face daily nagging about grandchildren. But my words set off mother-in-law like a firecracker. Her face turned beet red with anger. "Why? I can't believe you're married and not planning to have kids. I raised George all by myself, and you say you want to live a spoiled life? I respect that you raised George while working, but we've decided—" "I don't want to hear your excuses. You're the worst daughter-in-law." My attempt at pacifying mother-in-law had spectacularly backfired. She stayed furious and spent the next while berating me, not even allowing me room to defend myself. "Hey, I can't live with mother-in-law. She's been making a big fuss about wanting grandkids again today." After George came home, I discreetly talked to him about the day's events in our bedroom. George, however, was only half listening, mostly engrossed in his smartphone, offering occasional disinterested replies like, really?" Eventually, he put his phone down, got into bed, and closed his eyes. "George, are you even listening?" I was listening, but Mom's lonely, so what can you do? I owe her for raising me as a single mother. I want to repay her kindness. So, Olive, you'll have to put up with it for a bit." My annoyance flared up at George, who, claiming he was tired from work, quickly drifted off to sleep. I was frustrated firstly, with having to pacify my mother-in-law who's been going on and on about wanting grandkids, and secondly with George for unilaterally deciding we'd live with his mom. I'd heard that marriages are built on compromise. I knew families successfully managed to live with in-laws. Day one was a disaster, but to continue my life with George, it looked like I'd have to be the one making sacrifices. Waking George up to vent my anger was out of the question, so I accepted our living situation. Later, I'd realized this choice was a mistake. I often found myself wishing I'd shaken George awake that night, given him an ultimatum between his mom and me, because the next day, mother-in-law's harassment began. Olive, just because you work doesn't mean you can slack on housework. George and I are starving, so hurry up and make dinner. Okay. When I got home from work, George had already returned and was watching TV with mother-in-law in the living room. George isn't someone who can't cook. Before, if I came home late, he would have dinner ready for me. Yet today, for some reason, he'd done nothing. Even the dishes from the morning were still in the sink. He seemed to be enjoying a quiz show with mother-in-law while I was left to prepare dinner alone in the kitchen. When I finally laid out the meal on the table, mother-in-law twisted her lips in disapproval again. "What's this? Mostly frozen food, huh? You think it's okay to feed this additive packed stuff to an elderly person?" "I'm sorry, I've been busy with work." "Being busy with work is no excuse. Has George been eating like this every day since you got married? Poor guy. If his health goes south, it's on you." While mother-in-law angrily scolds me, spitting as she speaks, George quietly eats his meal. George, who side glances at the TV and seems to be enjoying himself while his wife is being yelled at by mother-in-law, doesn't seem like the George I know. Throughout dinner, mother-in-law never stopped complaining at me. "A wife who can't even cook and won't have kids is the worst. George could have done so much better. Prioritize George and me over your job." She kept going on and on until I was so mentally worn down I couldn't even understand what she was saying anymore. That night, I broke down crying in our bedroom. The thought of this life continuing was unbearable. George seemed surprised to see me cry. I told him I can't live with mother-in-law anymore, but George looked exasperated. "My mom is important to me, so I want you to treat her with respect too," he said before falling asleep. I couldn't even muster a rebuttal to George and cried until I fell asleep. Life with mother-in-law, filled with nothing but suffering, continued as it was. "George doesn't have to do a thing. Housework is a wife's job." Once mother-in-law said this, George truly stopped doing any chores. I continued to juggle work, household tasks, and being yelled at by mother-in-law. When mother-in-law found out George and I had separate finances, she started demanding money from me. "You're my son's wife, so giving me an allowance is your natural duty." She demanded money with this ridiculous reasoning. I was so tired of being yelled at that I just gave her the money, thinking if it could be solved with cash, so be it. My home no longer felt like a place to relax. When heading back home after work, my feet felt as heavy as lead. I spent days wondering how long this life would continue, feeling utterly hopeless. Then, a pivotal incident occurred. "I'm home. What's going on?" "Come here for a second." I arrived home that day, burdened with yet more emotional stress. Waiting for me at the entrance was George, his face twisted in anger. George, who had greeted me at the entrance, pulls me into the living room. There, sitting on the sofa, mother-in-law looked downcast. "Did something happen?" "This is all Olive's fault, isn't it? You must have done something." It was the first time I had ever seen George angry. Although I was shocked, I racked my brain. I had no recollection of doing anything to make mother-in-law feel this way. Feeling agitated, George finally told me what was bothering him. "I heard you've been making snide remarks to my mom every day when I'm not around. She even told me you only cook when I'm here, so she's not getting meals. What's your aim in being nasty to my mom?" I was dumbfounded and couldn't speak. George had fallen for the lies mother-in-law had fed him. It was mother-in-law who had been making snide comments when George wasn't around, even complaining about the food like, "Isn't this too salty? It looks awful." Yet I had never stopped serving meals. I was certain I had fulfilled all of mother-in-law's demands. "I haven't done any of that. I cook even when you're not here, and I've never made any nasty comments." "Stop lying." As George scolded me, mother-in-law looked over his shoulder at me and grinned slyly. George had decided that I was lying and took mother-in-law's words as truth. Looking at George like this made me feel like my head would explode. Maybe this is what people mean when they say they've woken up. As George continued to rage, he snapped at me. "Get out! Go back to your parents' home and reflect on yourself." Sure, I'll reflect. I really had to reflect. I had to reflect on why I had been wearing myself thin serving people like this. I quietly packed my things and left the house. When I got to my parents' house and explained the situation, they were shocked at my appearance. I hadn't realized it, but the stress from living with mother-in-law had caused me to lose a significant amount of weight. Holding me in her arms, my mom cried, "I wish I had never approved of this marriage." My dad said, "You don't ever have to go back." Luckily, my parents' home was a commutable distance to my job, so I took them up on their offer and started my life afresh at their house. Every now and then, I'd get an email from George checking in on me, but I left them all unread. As I worked hard and relaxed at my parents' home, I felt like I was breaking free from the brainwashing. I used to think that to keep my marriage to George, I had to endure whatever mother-in-law said. But a marriage with a husband who prioritizes his mother over his wife is not worth keeping. It took quite some time before I could look back and laugh at what a fool I'd been. Have you cooled your head yet? Yes, I feel much clearer now. Thanks for sending me back to my parents. Months passed, and I returned to the house where George and mother-in-law lived. George was waiting at the front door. I smiled and headed toward the living room. Mother-in-law was seated, glaring at me as I entered. "You're late! Being away this long is unacceptable for a wife. You owe George and me an apology for what you've done and for leaving this house unattended." Mother-in-law spoke loudly, and George agreed as he sat next to her. Without sitting down, I pulled out some documents from my bag. "I won't apologize. However, I don't want to make either of you uncomfortable anymore, so I've prepared this." Both George and mother-in-law's eyes widened when they saw the papers I placed on the table. The document was a pre-filled divorce application. Divorce? Hold on, Olive. I never thought about divorcing if you just apologized to my mom. Don't get it twisted. I'm the one who wants to divorce. I'm tired of being yelled at by mother-in-law every day and being treated like a maid. I thought I was doing it all for you, George, but it seems you care more about your mom than me. I don't see the need to value someone who doesn't value me. I realized that after clearing my head at my parents' house. I expected George to be shaken. However, I was surprised to see mother-in-law trembling as well. Now, Olive, calm down. Divorcing is a hasty decision. Maybe I've been harsh on you, but it's not that I hate you. I just wanted you to become a respectable wife. I don't want to become a respectable wife as you see it, so thanks, but no thanks. What's making you so nervous? Is it because you had a hard time without your free and limited housemaid for these few months? Mother-in-law couldn't argue with my statement. The house I'd kept clean despite all of mother-in-law's criticisms was a mess after just a few months of my absence. Clearly, housekeeping wasn't mother-in-law's strong suit. I came here today to deliver the divorce papers. If you're not willing to agree to the divorce, I've decided to consult a lawyer. Please mail it back as soon as you've signed. Goodbye. I left George and mother-in-law, both looking pale and downcast, and walked out of the house. Finally saying what I needed to say, I felt refreshed as I headed back to my parents' home. Shortly after, George promptly mailed me the completed divorce papers. I easily got my divorce and returned to a life where work is my primary relationship. I'm truly happy living life on my own terms now. As for George and mother-in-law, they seem to be living quietly in their dust-filled home. When I told the matchmaker who had set us up about our divorce, I was shocked to hear that George had re-registered with the dating service. He's apparently looking for a new housekeeper, but given his age and divorce history, his search for a life partner isn't going well. I had resigned myself to staying single forever after the ordeal, but recently a younger colleague told me he's interested in dating with marriage in mind. I'm unsure what to respond, but the truth is, I'm growing fond of this adorable, puppy-like person. We're in the stage of going on dates, and I have a feeling I'll end up being swept off my feet by this colleague. Here's hoping this marriage works out better than the last.
How much longer do you have? Feelings for me have cooled. How could he say something like that to his wife? I was more than angry and shocked. I was disgusted. What? You're the one who doesn't have long to live. What? Hi, my name is Sarah. I believe that aging gracefully is a timeless theme for both men and women. I am now 60 years old, but I still try to dress younger. It's not for my husband. When I look in the mirror and see that my hair, makeup, and clothes look nice, I get excited. People are surprised when I tell them I'm 60, and I'm relieved when they tell me I don't look it. My husband and I have drifted apart, and I'm left wondering why I married someone like him. I work hard in a comic book editor's editorial department. My husband is against me working, despite the fact that I don't make much money. When I look at my husband, who says with a nonchalant expression that men hunt and women do housework, I can only sigh. I'm wondering if we've gone back to the Middle Ages, or maybe even the Stone Age since he calls it hunting. I'd like to tell him that even in the animal kingdom, the lioness hunts. I enjoy advising young aspiring cartoonists with big dreams and working with them to create appealing characters and interesting stories. 60-somethings today are young. I believe the days of just relaxing at home after the age of 60 are over. My husband, on the other hand, was unique. How long will you keep working? You're 60 now. Women over 60 are useless. I was irritated, but my husband would never back down, so I was the one who did. Your opinions are so outdated, I said. I will not forgive you if you neglect your housework because of your job. Has my husband, who believes that housework is solely the responsibility of wives, not seen the news? He looks down on women, but also has a weakness for beautiful young women, which is the worst pattern in some ways. I finished college and got this job. I dreamt of becoming a cartoonist since high school, but I gave up because I'm not good at drawing. So I decided I wanted to help people who were pursuing their dreams. I was so busy with work that I forgot I had turned 40. My relatives approached me about an arranged marriage proposal, and I fantasized about being married. Marriage is an important event in life and should never be rushed. However, I was so impatient, and I thought that I would be single for the rest of my life if I missed this opportunity. I agreed to the matchmaking proposal and married my current husband, who was 41 years old. My husband was hiding his fangs and acting like a gentleman at the time, so I couldn't see his true nature. We didn't have children because we were both over 40, and I had no intention of quitting my job. My parents are in their 80s, but unlike my husband, they seem to be aware of the times and never asked me to have their grandchildren. Many women want to have children but are unable to do so. Why don't you have children yet? They would never say something like that. My parents know that's hurtful. Recently, my husband has been looking at his phone and sneaking around a lot. I thought maybe he was cheating on me, but the fact that I didn't feel angry shows that my feelings for him have completely faded. My mother-in-law, who lives nearby, paid us a visit one day. My father-in-law died 3 years ago, and my mother-in-law now lives alone. She is 85 years old, but she has always been stubborn, and my husband can't get enough of her. It's not because he respects her so much, but because she is wealthy. She has about $200,000 in savings. Because I'm an only child, I'll get her property. I hope she dies soon. Stingy woman. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There are some things you cannot say. If I don't be nice to her now, even if it is a lie, it'll be bad for me if she leaves all the money to an institution or something else. My mother-in-law walked in from the next room at that exact moment. I'm sorry for being so stingy. Oh, Mom. With an ogre-like expression on his face, my husband turned pale and took it out on me. Why didn't you tell me she was here first, you idiot? Stop talking. Don't yell at her all the time. You're annoying the neighbors. My husband turned his head down without saying anything because there was no excuse. How long have you and Kevin not been getting along? My mother-in-law asked while he was running away to take a bath. When did you and your husband stop getting along? It doesn't feel like a bad cold, but rather like a serious illness. You can tell? I said with an awkward smile. Sarah, if you can't take it anymore, you can get a divorce. Having grudges and having so much hatred is no way to live. The agony of having to be with someone you don't want to be with is unbearable. It must be difficult to live with people you dislike. You don't have to be scared of me. My mother-in-law's generosity warmed my heart. She was so knowledgeable and well-educated that it was difficult to believe they were blood relatives. My husband had to have traveled in time from the Stone Age. He took a physical examination at work again this year, but he seems to have failed. I'm curious if his inactivity, combined with his age, has taken its toll on him. He always comes home late, many times drunk. My husband claims to have had a drink with his colleagues at a bar, but I know he goes to a strip club. It's a wife's intuition. Kevin was retested, and I received a call from the hospital one day. Before I tell you in person, there is something I'd like to discuss with your family. It sounded like a scene from a TV show, and I felt a flutter in my chest. I was surprised to hear what the doctor said at the hospital. Only 6 months to live? When my husband was told he only had 6 months to live, I was a whirlwind of emotions. I was surprised that I wasn't shocked, but almost relieved. I felt guilty for my lack of empathy. I asked myself if a normal wife would be able to hide her disbelief, learning her husband only had 6 months left. It must be a mistake. You need to be prepared. Whether or not you tell him is up to you. His character, you know him best. What exactly do you mean by character? It is risky to tell him immediately if he has a negative personality. It may be better to tell him if he has a positive, strong personality. He will understandably become desperate if he learns he only has 6 months to live. He doesn't know, but he should refrain from going to strip clubs and drinking alcohol. I returned home with a gloomy feeling, but I decided that I should still tell him. I told my husband when he got home. Honey, I have something important to tell you. What is it? Unlike you, I'm busy. I'm also very busy. Aren't you just keeping yourself busy? Quit your job if you don't like being busy. A man making his wife work is not a good look. It makes me look like I don't earn enough money. I had no idea what he was talking about and was intimidated by his old-fashioned opinion. He doesn't seem to realize that most families nowadays have 2 incomes and that full-time housewives are rare. Today, I went to the hospital. What about the hospital? I want you to brace yourself. Hurry up, I'm busy. I was so enraged that I said it out loud. The doctor told me you only had 6 months to live. My husband kept a straight face for a few seconds before laughing. I rushed to cover my mouth with my hand. Only 6 months to live? Yes, I said, attempting to calm myself. Don't panic. Don't be arrogant. I could tell he was shocked because he was speaking strangely. Well, I guess I deserved it. Maybe I'm too rough on my body. I was surprised that he knew his actions caused this. So you better cut back on your drinking from now on. Shut up. Drinking is part of the job. Women have a bad habit of thinking it's just for fun because we've had a drink. I'm going to continue drinking. You shouldn't. Come home right after work. My husband smiled big. Wait, you're not going to tell me that you want more time together because I only have 6 months to live, are you? I would never dream of it, but I was forced to play the good wife. Of course I do. I'd like to spend more time with you. Don't be a fool. I don't have that much time. Honey. I was about to say something significant when he cut me off. All right, this conversation is over. That's all there is to it. Time is money, and I'm squandering it with you. How could he say something so hurtful without hesitation? But I didn't say anything else. I went into my husband's study to check on him, concerned that he might be depressed. I could hear him talking to someone else. My wife was told at the hospital today that she only has 6 months to live. I didn't ask her what it was, but 6 months. It had to be some sort of terminal cancer. I didn't understand what my husband was saying at first. 6 months, he said. My mother is 85 years old and has life insurance, and she'll be gone soon. Amy, come live with me after she dies. I'd like to restart my life. I was taken aback. My husband has made a terrible mistake. But my rage reached a boiling point when I overheard his conversation with Amy. I just couldn't bring myself to say the truth. He was messing with me. I can't stand hearing him talk about his mother like that. I care about her. You'll see things your own way your whole life, even if it is only 6 months. My husband didn't come home late. He didn't come home at all after I told him about his life expectancy. Sometimes he lies and says he's on a business trip. I'm shocked. He wears flashy clothes, buys expensive watches, and seems to spend tons of money every day. He also buys a lot of gifts. My husband doesn't have much money. Is he counting on the money for my insurance after I die? He is being less than human. It's been 3 months since I was told he only had a few months to live. Is there something wrong with your body? I asked my pale husband. Recently, I've been feeling tired and sluggish. Just going up the stairs at the station makes me out of breath. I think you should drink less. Shut up. I'm telling you, drinking is a necessary part of my job. Go to hell if all you have to say is depressing things. I was irritated, but I chose not to argue. You're such a nag. You and that old hag can go to hell. My mother-in-law was standing directly behind my husband. You mean me, the old hag? She said. Oh, you scared me. Are you talking about me? I've never referred to you as an old hag. I was talking about my boss. Oh, really? My mother-in-law looked at him suspiciously, so he lowered his head. My husband left without saying anything. 4 months have passed since he was told he only had a few months to live. My husband began coughing more often, missing work more frequently, and his blood pressure was low, when he usually had high blood pressure. His low blood pressure made him dizzy, and he almost fell down a flight of stairs. He still continued to travel for business. He spends his last day with his mistress, not his wife. He only has a few months to live, and he's busy cheating on his wife. He claims that his hands and feet are cold, and that he's aching all over, even on hot days. If you're not feeling well, you should probably refuse to go on business trips. Mind your own business. I'm not the only one looking forward to the business trip. They need me there. I can call the company and ask your boss to excuse you from the business trip. As expected, my husband was furious and yelled at me. Try it. I'm not going to let you get away with it. I made an effort not to laugh. I felt sorry for my husband, who deserved it, but I was unsure whether I should tell my mother-in-law the truth. She has always been very kind to me since the wedding. Then I had an unexpected visitor. I had never seen a young woman like her before. What is your name? Hey, I'm Amy. It's nice to meet you. I was taken aback by her bold visit to my home. I'll just be direct. Please let Kevin leave. What exactly do you mean by let him leave? I was shocked. Even I can see that Amy is incredibly beautiful and dainty with a great fashion sense. I couldn't understand why such a beautiful woman was dating my husband. He is not wealthy, so she's not with him for money. But it can't possibly be pure love, can it? It's gotta be a scam. Kevin is in pain. I think it's stress. Please divorce him. I laughed at her audacity. This is insane to say things like that openly to his wife. She, on the other hand, was unfazed. You only have one life. It's foolish to be tied down by marriage these days. I realized something. I ended the conversation with a smile because I knew if I talked to her anymore, I might lose my temper and put my hands on her. I'm not worried about that. I'm not sure if he'll go to heaven or hell because I'm not the devil. She gave me a brief look before smiling brightly. The devil, huh? You're funny, ma'am. I'm not trying to be funny. How old are you? 29. I couldn't believe it. 29? She's more than 30 years younger than me. What do you do for a living? He came to see me at work. He's very nice. Why would you date him? Kevin is tough and competent. Stop. I smiled as I looked at her. If you keep talking, I'll strangle you. It's not funny. Amy stared at me silently for a few seconds before saying, When I met you for the first time today, I was honestly surprised at how different my impression of you was. What did my husband say about me? Did he call me a witch? Amy burst out laughing. He never said anything negative about you. I just assumed you weren't this nice. I wasn't going to be flattered by her compliment, but I was starting to think maybe Amy wasn't such a bad person. I, of course, don't like his mistress, but if I were a man, I might get swept away by her kindness, too. There will be a time when your genuinity is questioned. Huh? Her head-tilting gesture is also adorable. Even though I don't feel bad for my husband because he is of the devil, I can't help but feel sorry for this girl. 6 months have passed since I was told he only had a few months to live. My husband, who has a pale complexion, took another day off today. But when he saw my cheerful face when he came home from work, he sneered. How long do you think you'll live? I was wondering how he could say this to his wife, no matter how much his feelings for her have cooled. I remained calm and kept my composure. You and the old lady are relentless. Say what you want about me, but don't talk about your mother. My husband got mad and yelled. Don't worry, you don't have much time left on Earth anyway. So, before you die, let me tell you what I really think. I believe marrying you was the worst mistake of my life. Words he should have never said. My husband had finally gone too far. Is that a will? I asked, fuming. A will? Wait, you didn't make some strange will, did you? You made a will? It's been 6 months since I was told what the life expectancy was. What are you even talking about? Have you finally gone insane? I was furious and completely shocked. What? It's your life expectancy. What? My husband stiffened and kept a straight face for a moment, but then he scoffed. You're not making sense. You've lost it. You need to go to the hospital. Kevin walked into his study. He passed out in the house the next morning. I immediately called an ambulance, called my mother-in-law, and went to the hospital. When the exam was finished and my husband found out the truth, he blew up and yelled at me in front of the doctors and nurses. Why didn't you tell me this? I warned you, it was 6 months ago. Don't lie to me, that was about you. My husband was taken aback when he remembered our conversation 6 months earlier. I didn't tell him who had been told about their life expectancy at the time. You're the devil. Please be quiet, this is a hospital. You should stay out of it. You both are in on it. He pointed at the doctor and the nurse. It was a mess and my husband was going crazy. Enough! If I stay here, I'll be killed. You're talking too much. Shut up! Shut up! I don't believe you! My husband escaped the hospital room, despite the nurse's efforts to stop him. I had no intention of stopping him. I went home after apologizing to the nurses and doctors on behalf of Kevin. My husband returned home a few days later, pale-faced. When I told Amy the truth, she told me that she had told him to leave me alone. I looked at Amy's expression and knew it might be true. I would have preferred her to have just told me he was leaving me, but Amy was married. It's not uncommon for strippers to lie about being single. Amy's husband had recently been released from prison. When Amy's husband discovered she was cheating on him, he choked her and she told him about my husband. Help me! They're threatening to drown me alive! How can I save you from such a terrifying man? How can you be so calm when your husband is in danger? How can he say that? Should you go abroad? I don't have any money. I found out he had spent all of his savings and was planning to get by on the insurance money coming in. It's not a surprise that he blew so much money so fast. He always went on business trips. Or really, traveled with Amy and probably paid for everything. Could you please give me some money? I don't have any. I dismissed him. Please borrow it from Mom. She won't lend it to me if I ask. She's a stingy old lady. Why don't you ask your boss? Oh no. My husband glared at me, startled and flustered like a cartoon character. I told you, let me know ahead of time if you were coming over. Is it on purpose? They only gave you 6 months to live, and that was 6 months ago. You'll be gone soon, right? My husband and I were both shocked at his mom's cold-blooded comment. You'd say that to your own son? How many times have you said that to your mother? My husband was unable to respond. Kevin, please apologize to Sarah. Then we can discuss it. This is my house. Get the hell out of here. I don't want to see your face. Let's go, Sarah. What? You've let me down. I'm cutting ties and will be living with my daughter. Daughter? Kevin is an only child. When I looked surprised to hear my mother-in-law had a secret child, she said, Sarah is my daughter. Do you have a problem with that? Wow. My husband rolled his eyes. I was about to cry, but I managed to keep it together. My husband and mother-in-law are blood. We wouldn't be family if I divorced my husband. But my mother-in-law still claims me as her daughter. She has shown me this since the day we got married. She loved me like I was her own daughter. Her love was genuine. My husband, who had lost his color, fixed his gaze on his mother. What are you talking about? Your only son or your daughter-in-law? I don't have to tell you which one is more important. Of course I would choose Sarah. I don't claim a child who cheats on his wife with no remorse. In disbelief of his mother's words, my husband walked into his study, silent. I quickly packed my things and moved in with my mother-in-law. Fortunately, I was working, and my mother-in-law had savings. As she advised, I divorced Kevin and cut him off. I wonder if he will be okay, even though he deserves it. Which will kill him first, the goons or sickness? But I'm really concerned about Amy. I'm not sure if that's a good thing. Marriage is a close relationship, and the most important part is love. If love fades, a marriage will end quickly. So, was this marriage a mistake? Well, I met my mother-in-law through it. We act like a real parent and daughter, and we live a happy life together. My parents were confused at first, but when I told them about the ordeal, they understood. I am content. Happiness is not something you can get from others. You have to find it yourself. Men swear to their fiancé's parents that they will make their daughter happy. I will do everything to make her happy. But I don't expect men to make me happy. We are the source of our own happiness. The possibilities are endless.
Are you all packed up yet? I'll be making my debut as a model soon. Once the big money starts rolling in, I will need a family. Lily, my daughter-in-law, is an aspiring model, acting like she's already a star. She's been causing trouble for me and the rest of the family, taunting me relentlessly with comments like that. After one too many remarks, I finally reached my breaking point. I decided to move out. I'm leaving today. With those cold words, I packed my belongings and really left the house. As I did so, I vowed to make her regret her actions. My name is Amelia. I am a 60-year-old homemaker. My son, Brian, 33, married a kind woman named Lily. Lily is currently a stay-at-home mom, but during her college years, she was a part-time model and is quite beautiful, Brian and Lily live in an apartment separate from my husband and me. It seems like they're enjoying their married life. Until 2 years ago, I used to work part-time, but I had to quit because of a back injury. I've always had a weak back, so I knew it was only a matter of time. My husband, Oliver, reassured me, saying, "We can live comfortably on my salary, so there's no need for you to push yourself." So I decided to focus on our household chores. I am deeply grateful for my kind husband. One day, he fell ill and had to be hospitalized. Fortunately, he was discharged after about 2 weeks, but we were anxious about our future life. We're getting old, and we'll probably get sick or injured more often. There will be a limit to living on our own. I agreed with my husband's opinion. It's too early to go to a facility. I wonder if we could live with our son and his wife. I proposed this and called our son. I told him it wasn't necessary to live together immediately, but my son replied, "Wait a moment. I'll talk to Lily." And he hung up, then called me back 10 minutes later. "Lily said we could live together right away. I think that's a good idea. If something happens to you or Dad, Lily and I can handle it immediately." Upon hearing these words, my husband and I gratefully decided to live together with them. Since my son and his wife were living in an apartment, they moved to the house where my husband and I lived. We started living together with the intention of getting along well with the 4 of us. But this was the beginning of a tragedy. A month after we started living together, a large cardboard parcel was delivered to the house. It was Lily's. "This is my diet machine. I ordered it online because I wanted to take care of my health. Can you move this to my room?" I was confused. If I carry such a heavy thing, I'm likely to hurt my back again. Besides, Lily should know that I have a bad back. "I can't carry this because of my weak back. Could you ask my son or my husband? I'm sorry." Then Lily clicked her tongue. "You really can't do anything, can you? You use your bad back as an excuse and make me do all the housework." Until now, Lily had never said anything so terrible. She had been considerate of me. We had decided to share the housework. I am in charge of all the cooking, so it's not like I'm doing nothing. "Lily, what's wrong? Why are you being so mean?" As I was feeling sad about the sudden event, Lily said, "I've always hated you. You're always so serious and annoying, and I feel suffocated when I'm with you. I'm tired of pretending to be nice," and showered me with harsh words. I couldn't believe she felt this way. With a huff, Lily walked away, leaving me standing in shock. I was thinking of consulting my husband and son, but in the end, I decided not to. I don't want to worry them too much, so I decided to try to repair the relationship on my own. But even after a week, Lily's attitude didn't improve. She would verbally abuse me when we were alone and hurt me. While I was considering confiding in my husband and son, Lily suddenly made an announcement at dinner. "Actually, I'm thinking of becoming a model again. So, starting tomorrow, I will be more mindful to eat clean for my health and beauty. Please cooperate with me, everyone." My husband, son, and I were puzzled. "What's gotten into you all of a sudden?" When my son asked, Lily began to speak with a dreamy look on her face. "After graduating from university, I worked as a company employee and now I'm a housewife, right? But I actually wanted to work as a model. My parents were strongly opposed to it, saying it's not such a sweet world, so I reluctantly got a job. I thought this life was acceptable. However, every time I see celebrities of my age, my dream of becoming a model grows and I can't stop it. I just want to give it a shot." According to Lily, it seems you can be a model even in your 30s. We allowed her to do so if she really wanted to. However, from the next day, Lily began to complain about the food I cooked. She would come into the kitchen and complain. "What? Today's dinner is hamburger? Please fix something more healthy with vegetables in them." "But there's salad and vegetable soup. So I think our dinner's well balanced, and it's not good for your body to only eat vegetables." Even when I said this, Lily wouldn't listen. On top of that, she even started telling my husband and son not to eat high-calorie snacks. "It's hard to go on a diet when someone's eating sweets in front of you. Please cooperate for the sake of my future as a model." That was her argument. Moreover, under the pretext of caring for her beauty, she started buying extremely expensive cosmetics and supplements. She began going out frequently, saying she was going to the gym, and so she stopped doing housework properly. "I'm going to be a supermodel someday. I'm different from commoners like you." She kept making such pretentious statements, troubling not only me, but also my husband and son. Lily was spending so much that it was straining our finances. So the three of us even held a family meeting to plan some countermeasures. Various discussions took place there, and we decided on something. About a week after the family meeting, without any concern for our worries, Lily continued to behave as she pleased. On a weekday afternoon, when my husband and son were at work, I returned from shopping to find an unusual situation. The $2,000 I had saved in my drawer were gone. When I confronted Lily, she said with a smile devoid of any guilt, "I used it to join a modeling agency." According to Lily, she applied for an audition at a modeling agency and was highly praised by a man claiming to be the president. He highly praised my beauty and assured me that I would definitely become a star. So he said I needed $5,000 for special lessons. "I used your money, Amelia. You were just going to use it for your retirement funds anyway, right? I paid the rest from my savings since it wasn't enough." I was furious with Lily's nonchalance. The truth is, I wasn't saving that money for myself, but she didn't know that. It's just too terrible to use someone else's money without permission. Lily continued to rudely dismiss my concerns. "If you're unhappy, you can leave. I can't get any more money from you, Amelia. You're an ATM to me, and I have no more use for you." ATM. Lily did indeed say that. "So you've been thinking of me like that?" "Yes." please start prepping to move out. Even after that, Lily kept nagging, saying, have you finished preparing to move out? I'm about to make my debut as a model soon. I don't need a family because I'm going to be making a lot of money. I couldn't stand listening to it any longer, so I decided to leave for a while. I'll leave today, I coldly stated, then packed my things and left the house. As I left, I resolved to make her regret this. I checked into a cheap business hotel for the night. In the evening, when their work would have wound down, I phoned my husband and son and told them everything that had happened that day. Both were speechless at Lily's audacity, and they agreed to punish her. My son told me a shocking truth, and I asked my husband to inform Lily about it. I have to work overtime today, but I'll tell her as soon as I get home. I'll make sure she apologizes to you, my husband promised. I had all the information I needed to get back at her. Now, all I had to do was get on my plan. The next morning, I received a call on my phone. It was from Lily. I'm sorry. I've been terrible all this time. I also apologize for the money from the drawer. She kept repeating. So she must have learned the truth about the money. I decided it would be better to have a face-to-face conversation. So I went home. When I returned, Lily had a swollen, tear-streaked face. I'm so sorry, Amelia. When I heard that the money in the drawer was for me. Yes, that money was for my son and his wife. They don't have any children yet, but they have talked about wanting to have them someday. Once upon a time, when the thought of having children came about, I had been saving a little at a time for their upbringing. Even if we didn't have children, I wanted this money to help support my son and his wife. I had intended to talk about it with my son and his wife one day, but Lily used it without knowing my intentions. Lily, I thought of you as a part of our family, because you're important to us. I didn't want you to struggle financially, and that's why I saved. But I must say, my affection for you has long since cooled, I said, glaring at Lily. Her many problematic behaviors had trampled over my affection for her. At a family meeting, I reported all the verbal abuses she made towards us. And yesterday, after my husband came home from work, he explained to Lily how the money had been intended to be used. Since it was already late, he told her to apologize first thing in the morning. Lily, regretting her actions, apologized numerous times. But I was not in a mood to forgive. Her wrongdoings didn't stop there. Brian, have you seen the results of the investigation? I asked my son. He shook his head. Not yet. I was thinking we would confront her all at once when you got home. Then my son brought out some photographs from his room and showed them to Lily. Hey, look at this. What the hell is this? He demanded. The photographs showed Lily clinging to a dashing man. Lily's face instantly turned pale. That's not it. He's the president of the modeling agency I just joined. There's nothing suspicious about our relationship, she denied desperately. But it clearly seemed like an affair. Ever since you started going out frequently, we thought something was off. We decided to hire a detective when we held a family meeting. We can't live with a woman who treats my mother so poorly and cheats on me. I'm going to divorce you. We're also going to ask for damages through a lawyer. If you have a problem with that, we're willing to take it to court. Lily, bombarded with my son's harsh words, slumped in defeat. Even my usually calm husband was furious and scolded Lily. My wife and Brian, they loved you seriously as a part of our family, and yet you frivolously stole my wife's money and even cheated on my son. I can't fathom what you were thinking. I can't think of you as a part of this family anymore. I was also filled with anger towards Lily. To think that you would hurt not just me, but my son as well. I've tolerated your terrible behaviors till now, but this is the end. You're definitely going to pay for this. My son handed her the divorce papers to fill out. I'll submit this to the city office. We're now complete strangers. Don't ever come asking for help, he declared. I'm sorry. The president was genuinely supporting my dream, and I was so happy. But when I become a model, I'll earn money and be able to pay the damages. Lily believed she could still become a model. There was one more thing I had to tell her. That president of the agency you've been getting along with, he's likely a scammer, I revealed. What? Lily widened her eyes in shock. That's a lie. He promised me he'd debut me and make me successful. She refused to believe. To Lily, who was still dreaming, my son showed her a piece of paper. We asked the detective to investigate your affairs as well. It turns out this man has committed similar fraud in the past and has a criminal record, he informed her. Lily couldn't believe it and took out her smartphone. That can't be. I have his number. I'll call him right now, she asserted. But no matter how many times she tried, the call didn't go through. Lily then brought out a business card she said was given by the president and showed us the address of the agency. Let's go here right now. We can prove he's not a fraud if we go there, she suggested. When my son took the business card and checked the address on his phone, there's a factory at this address. There's no modeling agency there. On my son's phone screen, a factory was indeed shown. Lily double-checked it with the business card in her hand numerous times, but she eventually began to shed large tears. So, I was deceived? What about my dreams? That man said I was 1 in 1,000. If everyone knew, why didn't you tell me? At Lily's outburst, my son wore a dumbfounded expression. We received the investigation results after work yesterday. We wanted to discuss it with you when I got home, but you had already given him the money. Your lover has probably already fled somewhere, so the money might not come back. After all, it's not so easy to make a modeling debut, right? You're mature enough not to fall for such scams. Don't blame us when you're the one at fault. I decided to add my 2 cents as well. It's good to have a dream, but you neglected your family because of it. Isn't that why a scammer approached you? Use this as a lesson to lead an honest life. Hearing this, Lily finally broke down in tears. I shouldn't have chased such a dream. It's all over now. Lily distorted her beautiful face and cried out loud without any regard for appearances. Seeing her in pain, I felt a sense of relief. That day, Lily had to leave our home. The three of us unanimously wanted her to leave as soon as possible. Just under 3 months, our days as a family of 4 had come to an end. She must not have imagined that the tables would turn when she drove me out. Serves her right. After that, Lily returned to her parents' house. But when they heard about the situation, they were furious, and Lily was disowned. I heard about this from Lily's father, Daniel, who informed me over the phone. I'm truly sorry for what my daughter did. I assure you, we won't provide any assistance to such a girl. It seems like Lily has no choice but to live alone from now on. Because she was blinded by her dreams, she has now fallen into a life of hardship. It's a fitting end for her. 2 months later, the scammer who deceived Lily was arrested. According to the news, he had deceived several young women using the same tactics and is headed to prison. He confessed to having spent all the swindled money, so it's unlikely that Lily would get her money back. It was a costly lesson, but maybe Lily will now live more responsibly. Lily managed to get a job at a private company, but having been a housewife for so long, she seems to be struggling a lot. Whether it's because of the lawyer's claim or not, Lily properly paid the compensation. I also had her return the $2,000 that she stole from me. She split her assets with my son, but with large expenses piling up, she fell into debt and seems to be in a serious financial straits. Perhaps due to the stress, she's completely lost her boasted beauty. She developed a lot more wrinkles and age spots and looks much older than her actual age. From here on, everything is what my son heard from acquaintances. I don't know if all of it is true, but she's likely living a difficult life. I hope she suffers as much as possible. The ones left behind, my husband and son, and I, began living as a family of 3. We haven't moved and still live in a single-family home. My son and husband help with the housework on their days off, which is a big help. The other day, we had a fun time doing a barbecue in the garden for the first time in a long while. We're also planning to go on a hot spring trip during the next long holiday. Everyone got hurt because of Lily, but we've managed to recover. My son said he's had enough of marriage, so I don't think our family will be growing anytime soon. For now, I want us to live a relaxed life as a family of 3. Nonetheless, through this incident, I learned the difficulty of seeing a person's true nature. They say it's important to see what's inside a person, and I couldn't agree more. Also, I've decided to be wary of sweet talk and live my life earnestly.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. "Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room. One had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. how about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.